Yo, number 2, November 2nd. Hey, just wanted to do a little bit of a shout out. Last night I saw a live, um, a Christian live TikTok, and there were some things that were discussed that I just wanted to give a little bit of insight to. There was a discussion that was going on about the video that was been going around TikTok of the kids walking through the mall and they were worshiping God, and how that touched so many people. I know that there was some discussion as to how that wasn't an efficient way to preach the gospel and things like that. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that because just wanted to encourage everybody that if you're feeling led by God to do something like that, there is no way that that was not of God for all of those kids to be joined together, going through the mall and worshiping God. So those of you that were part of that discussion, I just want to encourage you to if you're feeling God's leading you to do something like that, to follow through and do it. In my humble opinion, those having worked in the secular world my entire Christian life and ministered to unsaved people my entire Christian life, God uses the craziest stuff to reach people, stuff that you would not expect. So I just want to encourage everybody that, remember, God is still on the throne, and honoring and glorifying God through praise is always amazing. I mean, always amazing. Remember when Jesus came into the city of Jerusalem and the children were worshiping and calling him Lord and worshiping him, and when it was looked down upon and called out by the religious leaders, he says, out of the mouth of infants and babes you have ordained praise, and that if they were shut up, the rocks and stones would cry out. I feel like there's a place for everything, and not everything's going to look the same, right? So everyone's calling is different. Everyone reaches people in a different way. I know when I was saved, there was no way a certain type of preaching would ever have reached me. There's just no way. The preaching that reached me was a specific kind of teacher. Her name was Marilyn Hickey. I was still majorly doing drugs and things like that. And there is no way anyone, God uses everybody in a different way. Furthermore, what's interesting about that moment with those kids in the mall is it could very well be that their entire purpose for going that day was to touch one person's life who had maybe their mother had listened to that song. That was an older song, and they had turned away from God, and maybe that was God calling back the one sheep. So not everything is used in the same way, and everybody's going to be used differently. So I just want to encourage everyone that was part of that discussion to recognize that worshiping and glorifying God and bringing the presence of God into a place that never sees that is always beautiful, and God always delights in that. And it's not always necessarily about specific evangelism at that one moment. Sure, that's a part of what we do and what we're supposed to always be focused on. But David danced naked. At least they had their clothes on. And it's always good to honor and glorify God and worship God. That was awesome. And that's why it touched so many people. So I just want to encourage you, do what you feel like God is calling you. Just real quick, an example of something that really freaked out somebody I work with. As I've said before, I was part of a prayer team for years. And so part of that, part of what I would do once a week is I would actually fast. And so this would be a fast that I would do from the moment I woke up until after the prayer meeting. And we would often pray for people. They would come and pray with us, or we would just pray for the church and for, the world or whatever. And so one time there was a girl that I had been, that, my office basically was a place of prayer, right? People would come in and I'd pray for them. And I'd forgotten about this actually until my friend reminded me that I was always in my office with my door shut praying for people, right? So even the unsaved people in the office knew this. And there were times when they would ask for prayer and they weren't saved, but they would still come. So I remember one time I had fasted that day, like I always did on that Wednesday. And I was just going about my business, doing my job. And this girl walked by and she goes, "Christine." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "What's wrong with your face?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what's wrong with my face?" And she's like, you're glowing. She goes, no. And I'm like, well, I said, I'm not sure. I said, I'm fasting. Maybe it's because I'm fasting. I've got a prayer meeting tonight. And she goes, and she walks away and she comes back and she looks at me. She goes, Christine, you're really freaking me out. She goes, you are glowing. She goes, there's something wrong with your face. You are glowing from the inside. And I go and I look at her and I go, well, it must be Jesus. I said, because I don't feel any different. And so she laughed and she wanted to talk about it later, but just to show you, you never know. I mean, God uses everything. Things that we have no idea, God could use, God uses. And so, that was just a seed. Not everything is going to be, all evangelism is not going to look the same. God uses everything. So I just want to encourage you to just whatever you feel. The one thing I've learned is to try and be obedient to God, is no matter how silly it may seem. Sometimes at 9:00 at night, last night, there's this one girl that I have on my heart off and on regularly. And twice in the middle of the night as I'm about to go to sleep, God will show me a picture or something about this woman. And so last night as I'm trying to go to bed, I get up and I'm like, okay, the first time I did not, even though I know better, I did not respond like I should have done and texted her what I felt like God showed me, because God showed me this person screaming and yelling and crying out to God, God, help me, somebody help me, somebody help me, because she was just in a desperate state. And I saw that. And I didn't text her that night. And what God said to me is, help is on the way. That's all he said, is help is on the way. And so the next morning, feeling, knowing better, I felt like I needed to text that person. So I did text that person, and then she responded and said, oh my God, Christine, you have no idea what was happening last night. And I'm like, yeah, I do, because I saw it. God showed me. It was, pretty harsh. And so then again last night, God showed me a quick picture before, as I was trying to go to sleep. So I got up and I texted her, to encourage her. So just whatever God puts on your heart, just be faithful to obey. You're not going to always get it right 100% of the time. That's one thing you'll recognize. But, just try to honor God, and praise is always good. So anyways, that's all I had. And I love this teacher. So to the teacher, but this teacher's ways may not be the same as everybody else. And God uses everything. Never doubt that. Those kids could have been sent to that mall for one person that was suicidal, one person that had to hear that song, that knew that song. We just don't know. So it's not always about the things that we think it's about. But God doesn't miss anything. God's still on the throne. God uses everything. All right. Love you. Peace.